Welcome back to Close Up. I'm Steve Botari. Law enforcement and top prosecutors here in New Hampshire say the state is seeing a rise in extremism and hate crimes. And in the past 12 to 18 months, civil rights investigators say the pattern has changed to a, quote, more ideological issue, more planned incidents, and more ideological incidents driven by hate groups. In Laconia and elsewhere, swastikas and anti-Semitic slurs have been spray painted on political offices. You know, it's not just New Hampshire. Reports of anti-Semitism have risen nationwide. So what is at play here and what can be done about it? We're joined this morning by Rabbi Ron Fish, the interim regional director of the Anti-Defamation League, and Amy Lester with the Jewish Federation of New Hampshire. Thank you to both of you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Really appreciate it. So Rabbi, I wanted to start with you. You know, in this moment, why are we seeing this rise?
There are so many reasons that require an in-depth kind of unpacking of the history of anti-Semitism, the history of anti-Semitism throughout the West. We should not be surprised. Unfortunately, for thousands of years, this phenomenon has persisted. Hate against various groups, and specifically against the Jewish community, has kind of been embedded in aspects of our broader culture for millennia. And today, what we're seeing is in some ways surprising to many of us, even those of us who've grown up within the Jewish community where we thought America was past this kind of hatred. But we're discovering is it's always been there. It's kind of been perhaps hiding, perhaps dormant, and all it needs is a bit of a spark for it to be brought out into the open. That spark can come from political leaders who give a green light. It can come from cultural movers who give the signal that hating certain groups is acceptable. And it comes as well in business and in other spaces as well. Unfortunately, the kind of hate we're seeing against the Jewish community, as you point out, is not just in New Hampshire, it's not just in New England, it's across the country. But this trend is real. We observe it with all of our data, and it's very concerning.
And so, Amy, you know, for your group, for the Jewish Federation here in New Hampshire, with this latest iteration that we're seeing this spike, is it fear? Is it resolve? You know, what are you hearing from folks when you guys get together and chat about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much fear. I think what's happening is that, you know, it's shocking to us. It's increasing in huge amounts, as you just mentioned. And I think, you know, the people within our community, it's a small community, less than 1% of New Hampshire is Jewish. And so, you know, while it's always been there, I think the rise of maybe social media has made it more well-known and been able to share across alternate groups. And yeah, there's fear, it's discomfort, it's anger, it's all of those emotions. And as Rabbi Fish just said, I think it's not surprising to us that this is occurring. I just think the increase and the magnitude and the pain and discomfort is really just enormous.
Yeah, looking at the data, I noted the ADL said that, and this is 2022 data, so you know the most recent may even be larger than this. You recorded close to 4,000 anti-Semitic incidents in 2022, the highest total since ADL has tracked this data, and that goes back to 1979. And I have to imagine, you know, the next time this report comes out, given what we've been seeing every single day in the media, that number might even be higher than that, Rabbi.
We very much expect it to be higher, but it's important to realize the situation we're in is not just that 2022 was a high and we're expecting 2023 to be even on top of that. For the last decade, there has been a marked increase in anti-Semitic acts. There's also a marked increase, according to our research, in anti-Semitic attitudes. Our most recent study shows that 20% of Americans hold what we consider to be majority anti-Semitic attitudes. We measure 11 questions, and if a person answers yes to 6 of those 11, we describe their perspective as being significantly anti-Semitic. Today, that's 20% of the country. And it's also important to say, as opposed to the past, where the older generation tended to hold anti-Semitic views and the younger tended to hold fewer biased views of Jews, it's flipped now, where the younger generation holds on to many more, surprisingly, anti-Semitic attitudes than even their elder peers.
Well, I did want to ask about what we're seeing on college campuses nationwide and some of the protests we've been seeing. You know, Jewish students around the country report feeling unsafe on campus. A few days ago, UC Berkeley event had to be evacuated when anti-Israel protesters broke into a building. The Department of Education investigating several universities. how do we have, how do we create space essentially where there can be political differences, political discussions, be it policy differences about Israel, Hamas, what's happening with the war, versus where it crosses the line over to hatred? Amy, how do we create that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a discussion of free speech, right, in terms of what is that line that's crossing, right? And I think, there's a lot of confusion, as Rabbi Fish just said. It's in the middle schools, it's in the elementary schools, it's in the high schools. In fact, that's where most of the issues are. I mean, the college campuses, of course.
That young?
That young. I mean, we're talking about swastikas and name calling and all sorts of different, trickery that's going on. I mean, 30 years ago, I hate to use that year, but 30 years ago, it started when I was in school, and people were throwing matches and making announcements that we should burn the Jews and put them in ovens. And so if you fast forward to today, some of these oven discussions have accelerated, and it's just devastating to hear that those discussions are, magnified themselves at those very young ages. And where's it coming from?
We need to, I want to just emphasize what you suggested is absolutely right. There's every reason to open campuses, to open society for robust political discourse. That's fine. The conversations about the war in Gaza should fill us all with anguish over the loss of life on all sides. Of course, Israel was attacked with the intention of murdering as many civilians as possible, and it was the worst day in Jewish history since the Holocaust. But the way Israel's responded, people can ask all kinds of questions. That's entirely appropriate. What we're seeing is, especially on college campuses, the targeting of Jewish students as being Zionist. In lieu of using the word Jewish, calling them Zionists, it's open season. You can say anything you want about them. Because Zionism, which is not well understood, it's a core component of most Jews' identity today. Not everyone, but most.
Okay, Rabbi, let me ask you about this, because I do think it's helpful for our audience. Anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism. Is there a distinction? What is the distinction in your mind? How do you explain that?
Well, anti-Zionism, if people use that term to mean criticizing Israel, I would take issue with the terminology. Okay. That is not anti-Zionism. That's discourse, that's politics, that's fair game. If by anti-Zionism, we're talking about people who say uniquely, Jews don't have the same rights as other peoples. Jews as a community have fewer rights to function as a sovereign in their own land, then that is anti-Semitism. The terminology I like to use is that Zionism is the radical idea that Jews have the same rights and responsibilities as other people. If one singles out only the Jews in the whole world as not having natural national rights, that's a form of anti-Semitism.
So, Amy, how much has, in the last couple of years, the internet changed what is happening and what we're seeing, and how this is playing out every day?
I mean, some would say that that's what's bringing light to everything in the first place. I would argue that that's what's helping young people to expand their views on this and share outside of New Hampshire. That wasn't something that we were able to do before. So, I mean, I think the internet can also help us solve the problem just like it's caused the problem. So, that's why we're here, to get the word out. Just because we don't say it doesn't mean it's not happening, right? So, we're here to talk about it because that's one of the solutions, is we need to get the word out. And so I think with social media, that also can help us to show what's happening and ultimately eradicate some of this.
And Rabbi, you described this kind of as a spark, that this latest iteration of an increase. What do you see as the remedy?
Well, the remedy is alliances with people all across the spectrum. Jews alone can't defeat anti-Semitism. That belongs to our entire civilization and our entire society. Just as anti-black racism, just as Islamophobia, those phenomena are not only the responsibility of those groups to extinguish those forms of hate, we all have to join together. So if social media, which is the source of so many problems, is also at the same time potentially the source of our solution, it's the opportunity to reach out to people to say we have to come together, because the way our society is heading toward all kinds of mass hate as legitimate expressions, it's going to hurt everyone. We often say that anti-Semitism is the canary in the coal mine for the phenomenon of hate in any society. When the Jews are targeted, for sure, other marginalized groups are targeted as well. We've seen that in many cases across the country. In fact, even interestingly, the cases where Jews were not the specific target of violence in this country, as in El Paso or Buffalo, where Latinos or where Black Americans were murdered, the people who committed those acts often wrote about how Jews were behind the phenomena that they were trying to stop. When we work together to stop anti-Semitism, we work for the betterment of the entire society.
Well, Amy Lester, Rabbi Ron Fisher, I so appreciate you joining us this morning for this important conversation. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.